This presentation will focus the food security and the food security and nutrition situation in the southern basin of the Mediterranean region. I'm trying to link problems of household food security to policy action. But before I go directly to the presentation, this is the outline of my presentation. And in particular, I want to mention a couple of caveats. It is inconclusive analysis in the sense that it covered the region, but with a special focus on only 3 countries with specific case studies. It has no political agenda at all, no speculation on the impact of the Arab Spring, because it is an evolving situation and it is multi-faceted. It's still in draft, but we are at final stage and we will publish it before the end of this month. It was a technical paper written by a group of experts from FAO, WFP, UNDP, with substantial input from WHO, UN-OCHA, UNICEF, and Arab Organization for Agricultural Development. It was led by an international consultant. The focus of the technical paper is to review the socioeconomic status of the households in the countries bordering with in the southern basin of the Mediterranean Sea, and that's Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, the Palestinian Authority, Syria, Tunisia, and of course Jordan, which has quite a number of similarities with those countries. It was a review of existing literature. It was not an empirical analysis, but mainly a review of existing literature focused on evolving trends, underlying structural problems and challenges, as well as opportunities. But to draw some conclusions and see some of the implications of the recent developments in the region, we used 3 case studies. Before I go deep into the paper, I just want to give you some background information, a context, the food security in the region. We all know that there are some structural issues which are long-term, like the food deficit many people mention, because the region heavily depends on imports, high level of unemployment, especially women and youth, degree of high growth, especially in economies, even though there's no sure that there is an equitable distribution of income, higher population growth rate, and increased urbanization, dwindling natural resources. These are some of the fundamental problems, structural issues which cannot be solved in an easy way. And these were reinforced by a multiple web of reinforcing shocks, which are quite new. And these include the impact of the climate change, the political and social unrest, cross-border population movement. It's difficult to notice, but it's a reality, especially if you talk to IOM and other people who are keenly looking, the UNHCR, people who are dealing with the population movement. There's a reason to worry about it. It's a significant population movement across the borders. A slowdown of economic activities, the huge human resources. People are highly educated, especially some of the countries. There's a degree of awareness of the governance of food security, the right of people. Definitely, there are quite a number of opportunities which could be a catalyst for the governments to improve some of the problems. The countries we are talking, they share a vulnerability context that include fragile and overexploited natural resources, which is a major challenge. For instance, renewable water resources has fallen by more than 70%, which is scary. And it's predicted 40% decrease in the coming 50 years, 20, 25 years, 30, 35 years. Poverty level is still high, as many people mention, but the major issue, a quite large number of people are living within this threshold. And a small fall may push them directly to the poverty line. So these are some key issues which they share. As everybody mentioned this morning, the region heavily depends on imports, specifically wheat. And this is the wheat utilization and import. And if you see, Egypt is one of the largest users. But of course, throughout the region and most of the countries we are talking, wheat is the main staple food. So let's see what happened in the context of the high food prices and especially the wheat. For most of the countries, the hike of international food prices did not translate itself into high food prices, especially cereals at the local level, because the governments were trying to maintain subsidies on basic foods. But for sure, this came with a cost, very high cost, for sure. And for instance, like Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria, the compensation and welfare cost represents in 2010 these figures, which is quite huge. And this has a medium and long-term impact on the other developments and other important sectors. And given the fact that food prices continues to increase and the global price volatility will maintain over the coming months and years, yeah, absolutely, the cost of maintaining these subsidies will be extremely high. And this calls for a policy analysis, which, of course, should be based on evidence. Then, to better understand the initial impact, some of the impact of the global food prices in some of the countries, we tried to use 3 case studies. And one of them was the case study which we did in the Palestinian Authority. And this particular case study used resilience framework, which looks the root cause of food security rather than predicting the coping strategies of the households. The framework itself measures the ability of the household to keep within a certain level of well-being and to withstand stresses and shocks, which depends on the options available and its ability to maintain and manage the risk, to manage risks. The data used was from WFP, FAO, and the Palestinian Center for Statistics Peru. The main conclusion, because we know there has been quite a number of challenges in the Palestinian Authority, and the role of food aid and general humanitarian support has been very significant since 1960s. Access to diversified and stable income sources and better access to public services and assets to support these fundamental elements will indeed minimize the need for emergencies. These are some of the basics which people who are supporting the livelihood systems should support, so that the cost of the emergency interventions will diminish. The second case study was Egypt. It used household income and expenditure survey data in 2005, plus a more recent time series data, especially on prices. Some of the key conclusions include the increase in the price of cereals is not necessarily a relevant indicator to assess the impact of soaring food prices, and specifically in Egypt. Given the stability of the prices, especially the subsidized food, increase in price of other food commodities have more impact. And these include like the pulses, eggs, meat, fish, which is a very important component of the household diet. Increase in consumer prices in the local markets is far from being a simple transmission, because before even the global food prices, there were some fundamental problems in Egypt, like the avian influenza, which affected the poultry sector, the transboundary livestock disease which affected the small ruminants. There was a degree of depreciation of the Egyptian pound. So there was some fundamental problems, and food prices were already increasing at local level. The third case study was in Tunisia, and it was based on an assessment by WFP and FAO in Tunisia. The key conclusion, generally, the Kasserian central region has the highest prevalence of food insecurity in the country. For people to manage those risks, they used two strategies: smoothing consumption by switching to cheaper foodstuff, decreasing number and size of meals, and by smoothing assets by consuming stocks of seeds, sale of livestock, household productive assets and equipment. And if you see the kind of coping strategy that small and poor farmers are using and households, has a long and medium-term implication of the livelihood security. The challenge ahead now, like the presenter this morning mentioned, the economic growth is high enough to meet the popular demand for jobs.
Mohamed, please, 3 minutes maximum.
In the long term, however, fundamental challenges will be necessary, which targets policy responses in the manifold challenges. Summary and conclusions. These are some of the summaries and conclusions. Imports. The region heavily depends on the imports. Social protection is well established, but it's said to be more important even in the future. Poverty is the core of food security. Food is available, but access is the issue. Unemployment rate is high. Despite high levels of urbanization, the service industry is lagging behind, and many people depend on informal jobs. Potential for rural and off-farm economy is not fully exploited as an engine for growth. And this is an area where the government needs to do some investment. Lastly, the negative sentiment on the global economy and uncertainty in the local socio-political environment will continue to have a negative impact on the sub-region's investment climate. Some policy options like producer-related measures, natural resource management, efficient water use, research and education, mitigation of food prices, proper early warning and price monitoring, and reforms. These are some of the key areas where maybe it's needed to be considered. Observations for way forward, importance of the linkages. Of course, integrated approach is needed because, as we said, everybody said food security is multifaceted, and it needs the engagement of various sectors, and there's a lack of regional integration. Large potential for governments, private sector, because food security is multi-stakeholder element, and it needs the governments to involve all these different people. Will the Arab Spring provide a new chance to make governments accountable to their citizens? Of course. So why not us? Thank you very much. Let me stop there.